Ms Patten for a question, please.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Mr Jennings. Cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple and Tron are now accepted as legitimate forms of assets and as payments for goods and services in Australia. Digital asset trading is now regulated and monitored by several bodies including ASIC, AUSTRAC, the ATO and through the Australian Digital Commerce Association. These digital assets, which use cryptography to secure their transaction, have become increasingly popular amongst the public, with billions of dollars transacted annually, while some of Australia's largest cryptocurrency exchanges are based right here in Melbourne. My question is, what steps is the Victorian Government taking to make cryptocurrency more widely accepted across government platforms now that it has become a legitimate form of asset and payment?
Minister. Order. Order. Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank Ms Patten. I thank Mr Deladakis for perhaps creating a segue through interjection about how my response may be framed in relation to Ms Patten's question. Ms Patten is actually associated, as we all know, with things that are out on the edge. She's actually pushing things out to the edge in a whole variety of areas. And sometimes there is an interesting mix between the risk and the opportunity that's associated with that push. And indeed, I'm very mindful of it because, in fact, it's interesting in relation to this balance. I'm mindful of the Chinese characters for Christ, the word crisis, in which they actually we come together. Two characters come together with danger and opportunity. Risk and opportunity in relation to this. China, as a jurisdiction, for instance, refuses to engage in cryptocurrency because, in fact, its assessment at this point in time is that they've got enough difficulty in managing their market systems and their regulatory environment. They don't want an additional problem, so they actually rule out cryptocurrencies being a viable option. Finland, on the other side of the geographic connection, are very optimistic about it. They actually completely open edge and they actually see 100% they're with the program in relation to cryptocurrency. Russia is somewhat in between those two jurisdictions, both in terms of geography and both in temperament. In Russia, probably they're a bit interested in the adventurous side, perhaps some of the danger side, and they haven't actually quite worked out how influential they're going to be on the regulatory side. So I use those three countries, those three jurisdictions, in relation to the challenge. The challenge is how mature is your system, both in terms of validating transactions that you may not actually have tangible assets before. Victoria was actually established in the gold rush back in the days where, in fact, the whole value of currency was determined on a fixed asset. We used to store gold just over here. So it was a very tangible connection between the value of money and what the proposition that underpinned it. In the world of cryptocurrency, we're moving to an area where you may not be able to validate the real nature of a transaction, but you need to have information sources and technology that enables you to validate at a particular point in time. Hence the interest in blockchain. And for the second time in 2 days, I've actually had a question that relates, or a conversation that relates to blockchain. We're clearly on the revolution in this chamber because up until that time, I don't think I've ever actually had it discussed at all. These are things that the Victorian Government will be interested to see as the Australian economy is open up to this. The taxation regime has to take account for this. Victoria will be looking at ways in which we can get the balance right between the risk and the opportunities.
Ms Patten on a supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I actually appreciated that response. And, you know, I was actually in a convenience store this morning on the corner of Russell and Burke, and there's a Bitcoin ATM there. So it is changing. So by way of supplementary, I'd suggest that the state of Victoria holds a multitude of assets and has deals in billions of dollars in transactions annually. Does the Victorian Government currently use cryptocurrency? I think I know the answer there. And in any of its financial dealings? And can the minister outline to the House what, if any, digital assets are currently held by the Victorian government?
Minister? Yeah, I almost reckon that from my first answer, you may have been able to work out whether we actually make transactions in cryptocurrency. No, we do not. In terms of the maturity of our systems and our regulatory environment and our technical capability at this point in time in relation to be early adopters or movers at a government level in relation to services, we are not at the cutting edge, but nobody's at the cutting edge in terms of government services in relation to that across Australia, and I'm not quite sure how many jurisdictions across the world at a government level are leading that. But certainly Victoria is alive to these issues, actually understands the potential benefits, understands the risks, and we know that we actually have to be part of a worldwide digital movement in relation to these areas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what Victorian citizens want is confidence and to be able to verify and validate the nature of transactions. And that's something that we'll concentrate. How do we guarantee confidence in the validity of a transaction?